When you think of the word leader, what do you see? My first experience with leadership was as a high school student when I ran for student council. I was first class secretary and then student body vice president. My senior year, I decided to run for student body president. Now, some of my classmates tried to discourage me because my high school had never had a female student body president. There's no way the school's gonna elect a girl, they told me. Well, maybe they were right. I lost that election, but I was hooked. I knew I could and would be a leader.
In my case, I never saw myself in any of those roles. I didn't run for any student body president or anything like that. I didn't start to lead clubs and things like that at school. I just didn't see myself as a leader. But then, right out of graduate school, I got my dream job, doing applied research at a global organization. I loved the work I was doing. After about a year or so, my husband asked me, hey, do you think you'll ever want to manage or lead in doing this work? And my response was, no way. I love doing the work too much to give it up and think about managing or leading. It wasn't until a little bit later that I understood that leadership happens in everything that we do. And we can take on those challenges regardless of our formal title or formal role. And so I challenged myself to exercise leadership in whatever work I was doing. And look where it got me. I'm a senior executive now. So when you think of the word leader, what do you see?
Turns out when you ask this question, most people will describe someone who's white, male, and about 6 feet tall. But women have made incredible strides in the last decade. Just this year, more women than ever were elected to U.S. office. Between 2008 and 2018, we've seen a 51% increase of women on boards and a 67% increase of women in senior executive positions.
Sounds pretty great, right? Well, what we see is that we know from research that women make great leaders. So for example, if we ask men and women in organizations whether they have a lot of women or a lot of men as their leaders, both the men and women who have lots of women as their leaders will say, I feel more supported in my career, I feel more committed to the organization, I'm more engaged in my work, and I'm less likely to burn out than people who have fewer women leaders. Great data. We also know that companies that have a higher percentage of women on their boards outperform their peers in many, many financial areas. Great, looks good. But we're still underrepresented at all levels of corporate America. It's not a shortage of women, we're half the population. So what's happening? Well, some of what's happening is that we are only 6% of the Fortune 500 CEOs. Small number. And if you look at people who are leaders on corporate boards, there are more men named John than there are all women on those same corporate boards. Okay. So where are we, right? Where are these women? And in fact, in the last year, in 2018, we learned that the number of women CEOs has actually shrunk. Now, there weren't that many of us to begin with. So what's going on?
So are we opting out, dropping out, getting overlooked? Something interesting happens when you look at women in corporations. At entry level, men and women are about even. But as we move up in our careers, all of a sudden, the number of women in senior ranks drops off dramatically. And if you are a Black, Asian, or Latinx woman, this number looks even worse for you.
So these data have already told us that organizations are doing better if they've got more diversity in their leadership ranks, but we're just not represented there. And so what is it that is standing in the way? What are the barriers? We are certainly running into barriers in terms of coming into leadership roles and then remaining in them. But what is standing in the way? Well, let's talk about several of the reasons.
Raise your hand if you've ever been called bossy. There's a lot of bossy people here.
Yeah, you know.
Here's what we know from research. men are seen as being the boss, while women are seen as being bossy. Now, both men and women are just as likely to demonstrate bossy behaviors, but only women get labeled bossy. So what do we mean by bossy? We mean micromanaging, being dictatorial, ignoring other people's ideas. Now, if you use bossy behaviors and you're a man or a woman, you will be labeled unpromotable. But if you are a bossy woman, you're even less likely to be promoted than a bossy man. Organizations can also hold women back in two ways. Women have a lack of access to sponsors. Sponsors are senior level individuals who proactively advocate for their high potential talent. And sponsorship gets you high visibility assignments that can lead to promotion.
Organizations also hold women back by not ensuring that they've got the chances, the opportunities to play roles that are likely to get them promoted. Now, usually in organizations, these are revenue-generating roles, client-facing, or operations kinds of roles. They also come with a lot of demands, and there are people who will say, well, she's a woman, she won't want to do that. She has young kids, she won't want to do that, and don't even ask her. So there are these issues getting in the way that organizations are holding up to keep us from being in leadership roles. So we wanted to know what to do about it. So Portia and I have done this research and have written our book called Kick Some Glass. And in it we mined all the latest research about women in leadership, and we interviewed about 40 highly successful men and women leaders. We put all of this in the book called Kick Some Glass. There are three audiences, three groups that we identified in this that we think can take actions that can help increase the percentage of women in senior leadership roles in organizations of all kinds, not just corporate, nonprofit, government, all kinds. These groups are women ourselves, organizations and men, guys, we need you, we'll tell you about that, parents, grandparents, and other adult role models who can serve to support girls as they're learning about themselves as leaders.
Let's start with us first. What if we as women didn't hold ourselves back from leadership roles? So when we talked to these high achieving successful individuals, we were really surprised by one thing, which was that most often they weren't actually trying to achieve a senior leadership role. Instead, they tended to do three key things very consistently. They optimized their careers for experience, they optimized for learning, and they optimized for working with people who could help them learn critical skills. Now, these are high-achieving, ambitious, driven individuals. And so more often than not, they got to the top of that corporation through their own drive. Now, the common denominator among the women we spoke to was they all tended to make their decisions around closely held values. And those values guided the choices and trade-offs that they would make both about their careers and their personal lives.
And what we also learned is that, this may not be a surprise to you, women are more likely than men to let other demands in their lives take priority over their core values and the things that are really important, their deepest intentions about their lives. I'll share with you an example. We met with a woman named Lena, who is an electrical engineer at an oil and gas company. And she had 4 kids, was expecting twins, and really was struggling to balance what was most important to her, which was to have both, to grow in her career. She loved the work that she was doing, and to spend time with her young family. So in our coaching relationship, what we helped her to think about and hone in on were her core values and her most important priorities, and be able to figure out ways to manage and feel more in control of her career and her job so that she could have both. She could spend more time with her family and also continue to stay on that path to success in her career.
What if men and organizations actively advocated for women? Novel concept, right? Maybe you've heard this fact. Women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. Now, mentors are senior-level leaders who can be a man or a woman who coach, guide, and provide advice to their high-potential talent. Sponsors are senior level leaders who proactively advocate for their high potential talent. And here's what we know from the research, which is men tend to receive more sponsorship. And if you think about it, it makes sense. There are more men in senior leadership roles. It's human nature to seek out people who are most like ourselves, and therefore men tend to receive more mentoring, more sponsorship. And sponsorship is key to moving up in an organization.
Right, so what can we do about it, right? This is where we really need the men. We need men to identify and reach out and sponsor high potential women and people of color who bring more diversity of thought and experience to their organizations and help their organizations be stronger. So
Rosalie's a university president, longtime goal of hers. Earlier in her career, she was offered a role, an administrative role at a very large statewide university system. And she was reluctant to take that role because her goal was to become a university president. And she was worried by taking this administrative job, it would take her off track. However, a conversation with her sponsor got her to change her mind. He helped her see that working at the statewide level would give her access to the governor's office, working with state legislators, being able to work across multiple campuses, and that would be the perfect training ground for her ultimately becoming a university president.
And so Rosalie's sponsor helped her in many ways, and one of those was he was part of a very diverse network that was helpful for her in building her career and getting the kind of exposure she needed.
Okay, so we're going to get a little bit wonky now. No, we're not scientists, but we are going to get a little
bit of a scientist.
You are a scientist,
okay.
That's true. Okay, so networks are operational, personal, and strategic. Operational networks help you get your day-to-day work done.
Personal networks help us develop and grow, and our strategic networks introduce us to those job opportunities and projects and people who can help us really to advance in our careers and our lives in the ways that we want to. All right, when I say the word networking, how many of you go, ooh? Right? Because, yeah, some of us do, because networking is thought of as being either all social, or maybe we're using people for our own gain and we're not helping them out. That's not what networking is, okay? So networking is when we are doing things with and for each other, all right? And we need to have all of that in an effective network.
So the job I'm in now, I got through my personal network, and it turns out to be a job that perfectly fit my career goals and aspirations with a company that also met my personal values.
Third question, what if we focus on the next generation of leaders, girls? This is something all of us can do. Parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, sponsors, whomever, right? All of us can play some role there. When we were doing the research for the book, one of the things that Portia and I learned, and which really kind of made us distraught, was that girls as early as fourth grade, stop seeing themselves as leaders. And by doing that, they don't put themselves in the position to build leadership skills and experiences. So they may not be helping out, gathering groups of friends on the playground and that sort of thing. So it was really disturbing to us, and we wanted to think about, what is it that gets in the way?
They're told, you're bossy. Now, if you were one of those people who raised their hand, and there were a lot here who raised their hand,
we did too,
and were told they were bossy, you may have stepped back from what you were attempting to do because you didn't like being called bossy, or you were afraid of being disliked by your friends.
And you thought you were doing yourself a favor in the moment, but actually you're stepping back from leadership, and you're not taking on those kinds of activities that help you learn and build leadership skills.
Some girls may tell themselves, I can't do that. Here's what we know from a study in 2017. 5-year-old girls thought that women could be really, really smart, but 6-year-old girls didn't always agree with that statement. Now, these same researchers invited boys and girls to play games intended for really, really smart kids or for kids who tried really, really hard. Girls opted for the latter, while boys showed no preference. So what's going on here? Researchers hypothesize that when girls repeatedly opt out of activities that require smarts or brilliance, over time, they begin to internalize that they can't excel in certain roles or industries.
So something else that happens is that girls may not know where and how to learn leadership skills. If they're not being supported in schools and taking on leadership roles, or if they don't have access to programs like Girl Scouts or Girl Guides, they may not know how to build and have an access to build those leadership skills. They also may not see people who look like them, right? So if we don't see people in leadership roles who look like us, we don't know that we can aspire to those roles. There's a place where we adults can come in. We can help them see some of what they are what's possible for them.
So what can we do? First, clearly don't call girls bossy or let others call them that. Instead, let the girls in your life shine. Encourage them to flex those leadership muscles. Maybe it's organizing activities for siblings, leading friends, or running for a student body president.
We can mentor a girl. We can help her discover her strengths and build her courage and her confidence in herself. We can also help out on these clubs, Girl Scouts or Girls Who Code or Girls Rock. They're all opportunities that help girls learn how to build leadership skills, and she's actually starting to build her network, which she'll use later on as she gets older.
So we are facing unprecedented challenges in the world today. Climate change, political instability, the underengagement of young people, underemployment, technology disruption. We need more women leaders than ever in this time of disruption. And we especially need more young women to step forward. We are particularly excited by the number of young women and girls who are stepping forward to take on some of these challenges in really meaningful and substantive ways.
Right. And it requires all of us, not just those younger women, right? So we women at our age, we can step into the arena. We can step into leadership roles and be models for girls, and also be models for women in the workforce. We can build our networks, because our networks are something that we need to give care and feeding to, just like any other part of our lives. Men and organizations can form sponsorship programs. They can be sponsors to women. They can create inclusive practices that help women advance in leadership in the workplace.
So parents, grandparents, frankly, any caring adult can be a role model and encourage young women and girls to step into leadership roles. We are excited by the women that are stepping forward and the men that are coming forward to support them. Now, the barriers that keep women from becoming senior leaders is called the glass ceiling. But if we all work together to support the women and girls in our lives, together we can kick some glass.